Well, just before Christmas, something happened in Canada, and you know the timing of these things, it gets lost in the holidays, but I wanted to talk about it, even though it's January, and it's this. A member of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, a woman of color who was active in race relations, was fired by Justin Trudeau because she was a critic of radical Islam. Now, she is a promoter of Islam in the sense that we are, and Raheel Raza and Tariq Fatah and Salim Mansour, that is an Islam that coexists with the West, a patriotic, democratic, liberal Islam, progressive Islam, critical of political Islam. Let me tell you the woman I'm talking about. Her name is Christine Douglas Williams, and in fact, she's the author of a book about liberal Islam, and let's put the book on the screen here right now. It's called The Challenge of Modernizing Islam. Now, she was on the board of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. I'll just give you 1 minute of history on that before I introduce Christine. That was created by Brian Mulroney and the Japanese Canadian community to promote harmony so that, for example, the history of Japanese internment 75 years ago would not be forgotten. So private money from the Japanese community plus government money from Mulroney set up this Race Relations Foundation. Well, the problem about taking government money is you also have to take government direction. And so when Christine Douglas Williams was found to have criticized radical Islam, well, Justin Trudeau would not tolerate that. And so that liberal white man fired this woman of color based on her comments about Islam, which is not a race, but rather a set of ideas. Joining us now via Skype is Christine Douglas Williams. Nice to see you again, Christine. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ezra. It's a pleasure.
Did I accurately summarize what the Canadian Race Relations Foundation is about and why you were sacked by Trudeau?
You did. I will add one other thing that I think is important. The Japanese redress was all about, when they finally signed that document with Brian Mulroney, they did it so that such human rights violations will not happen again. They wanted to make sure in that agreement that Canada was a place that was safe for everyone, that equal rights and human rights will be practiced and will be celebrated in Canada.
I guess one of those human rights is freedom of religion and political freedom. You dared to criticize radical Islam, and one of the examples that the government told the Toronto Star, I mean, it was all very murky. There was no formal on-the-record statement that I know of. They just sacked you, and then they leaked their reasons to the Toronto Star, but I would take them at face value, is that you criticized political Islam, Muslim Brotherhood-style political Islam in Iceland, and apparently that is now a racist thing to do. Of course, political Islam is not a race, it's an ideology. Are they basically weeding out anyone who is against the Muslim Brotherhood interpretation of Islam?
Well, that's how it appears to me, Ezra. Based on Motion M103, first of all, it's important to be said that the Canadian Race Relations Foundation functions under the Heritage Department. And I want to clarify something. No one is even assuming why I got fired, even though all evidence points to it. I was given a letter, a registered letter from Melanie Jolie highlighting that this was the issue. I was very active on the Canadian Race Relations Foundation as chair of the investment committee, on the executive committee, the human resource committee. But here's what she said. I have become aware, and I'm quoting this note here, of language used in your online articles and blogs that appear to be inappropriate and inconsistent with the CRF mandate vision of promoting diversity and inclusion and respect for democracy, which is strange because that is exactly what I'm pursuing when I was on that board and also in my work off that board, because I don't see color or creed when it comes to promoting human rights for all.
Yeah. Well, I want to quote from the Toronto Star. They interviewed the president of the Canadian Race Relations, or the chairperson, Albert Lowe. And I just want to quote from the Star because they asked Albert, well, what's Christine Douglas Williams like? And Albert said, we always appreciated her positive contributions. She's always supportive of positive race relations. And he said, I saw quite a number of participants in the Muslim community say they were very warm to her and always positive and friendly. And I believe that to be true. I don't know you well, but I see you from time to time. And I think it's And I feel the same way about when I see some of these Muslim progressives that I just described. I think what Justin Trudeau and his cabinet minister Melanie Joly are doing is they're purging anyone who supports progressive Islam, and they're replacing them with people who support Islamic supremacism. And you see that in Trudeau himself. He has no compunction about going to the Wahhabi mosque in Montreal. He brags about it. There is no one too fundamentalist in Islam for him. That's my hypothesis for what's going on.
I think your hypothesis is absolutely correct, Ezra. And I would go further to say that when one looks at the progressive Muslims, they are not in support of this word Islamophobia. That is a word that is in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Observatory. And it has a specific meaning, which actually includes criticism of Islam. Mm-hmm. Now, if one goes to the website and looks up what that means, it talks about anti-Muslim bigotry, which I am completely against, but it also mentions criticism of Islam and how insulting it is to Muslims. Therefore, they're promoting it as a form of anti-Muslim bigotry and attempting to outlaw criticism of Islam, which is really a form of Sharia law and blasphemy laws that we see the OIC promoting globally.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't surprise me one bit that you were purged from this organization. Any organization that takes money from Trudeau is going to have to bend the knee to Trudeau. And although I find it unacceptable that you were kicked off, I don't find it surprising, especially given that the cabinet minister who sent you the letter is also the one who will be implementing M103, the anti-Islamophobia censorship motion. So it doesn't surprise me one bit. What has been the reaction from people who have dealt with the Race Relations Foundation? I read what the chairperson, Albert Lowe, said to the Toronto Star. He was very supportive of you. I don't know who deals with the Race Relations Foundation. I don't know if they're all just sort of government hangers-on who just do whatever Trudeau says because he pays them. I don't know if there's actually any progressive Muslims who would have complained that you were kicked out. What has there been? I mean, or have people just sort of said, "Good, we never liked her anyways. Glad she's gone." Like, what has been the political reaction, the reaction from the community you dealt with?
I will start by even saying Art Mickey, who signed the agreement with Brian Mulroney, is a wonderful person. I have always gotten along fantastic with him. When I had gotten that warning letter, he does not take sides, but he certainly knows people and understands. He has been very good to me. The chair has been very good, the co-chair, the spokesperson, because I was a member of the executive committee. At any time, I could have been not a member because you actually, as an appointee, you express an interest of a committee you may be able to contribute to, and it's up to the executive that's there, the chairman, to decide, well, are we or we not putting her on that committee? Mm-hmm. So I have had support. They have not taken sides publicly because obviously they have to run the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. They're also operating under Melanie Joly's department, but they have a vision for all of Canada. Mm-hmm. Their vision is harmony for all of Canada, not just one specific group. Right. And Albert Lowe has written a piece called about politicizing race relations, which really was about some of the efforts that we're seeing today to do just that. Yeah. And it takes it out of the mainstream to try to say, well, race relations belongs to one specific group, namely in this case, Islamists, who have actually turned it around to be Islamophobia. That has become the branding of anti-racism initiatives, as we see with M103. Yeah.
Now, you were appointed because, of course, the federal government, it's run by Trudeau now. It used to be run by Harper. You were appointed under the Harper government and then reappointed less than 3 years ago. Has anyone from the conservative opposition benches spoken out or in any way shown support for you or objected to this politicization of the Race Relations Foundation?
I have gotten a couple of emails, personal, private emails of support. I don't know what the conversation is behind the scenes, but I will tell you, which is related to this, I am very concerned with what I see going on among traditional conservatives. For example, and I know this is provincial, Patrick Brown, when the anti-Islamophobia motion went through the Ontario legislature, he advised all of his caucus to vote for it. Yeah. He supported it. and he actually declared that there is Islamophobia, and he made the mistake, whether it was a mistake, whether he was being politically correct, I don't know which one, to state that Islamophobia is a problem. There's no phobia against Muslims in this country and against Islam. It needs to be questioned like every other religion, like every other ideology. There's no phobia. Anti-Muslim bigotry is the word that should be used, and Islamophobia is an agenda from the OIC. It needs to be flatly rejected, and I think some people on our side are being taken in by it. They don't understand the background, and then maybe some of them also want the vote from the Muslims that we see coming into the country that are actually pro-Islamists. So there could be a political component as well, even on our side.
Yeah. Well, I see this as the beginning of an ideological litmus test to work anywhere in the public square. I mean, the Race Relations Foundation is one thing, but I wouldn't be surprised if soon any public servant, any policeman, any judge who dares, anyone anywhere in public life, a teacher at a public school, if anyone utters something that is skeptical of even radical Islam, that they would be purged. I really see this as the snowflake that's going to turn into an avalanche. Have you heard of any other skeptics of radical Islam who have been purged or threatened in the federal government or in the provincial government?
A teacher, and I can't mention names here, but I have gotten a string of emails about a teacher that was being harassed because she mentioned a few offensive things that when you look at the string of emails, it was not in the least bit offensive. We have come to a point, and this is a big concern of mine, where any criticism at all of radical Islam is going to be deemed racist. Right. This is not the kind of Canada that we have built, that we have evolved in as a nation. Offending someone is a person's right to do so, and to be offended. I get offended when people start criticizing, or in fact, not criticizing Christianity. I get offended when people start mocking Christianity with the most obscene cartoons. But I'm not going to start lashing out and trying to interfere with that person's human rights to do so. If somebody wants to be a jerk, let them be a jerk. It's their democratic right to be one. Yeah. And if I'm offended, well, I'm offended. But this agenda that we see driven by the OIC, and it's being taken up by our governments, it's an extremely dangerous one. I was an example because I was a director at the Canadian Race Relations Foundation from the Heritage Department. But what happened to me, it's going to happen to everyone. If you think about it now, the way the world is today, I have heard personally that people they've told me, look, I can't say a word about Islam in my workplace. I had a radio guy in the States at a very big radio station say, look, I have to be careful what I say here, because if I say anything to offend Islam, I can get sacked. Yeah. This is not the kind of world we want to be living in if we proclaim that we are interested in even continuing our evolution in democratic rights and freedoms, particularly the way we have flung open our borders to all kinds of immigrants coming in. We have lost control of our democracy, Ezra.
Yeah. You know, just as you were talking, it made me think, I think there was a principal in Ontario who was interrogated or suspended just for sharing an anti-radical Islam comment on her personal Facebook page. So I think it is coming along. Well, Christine, it's good to talk with you, even though the subject matter that brings us together is unhappy. And I'm glad you're speaking out about it. And hopefully we can keep in touch with you in the weeks and months ahead. Let me just ask you in closing what you're doing now. I mean, I know the Race Relations Foundation was not a full-time job. You have the book out called The Challenge of Modernizing Islam. What else are you working on these days? What else are you doing?
I continue to write for Jihad Watch. I'm the public affairs and media consultant for the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, Canada. I continue my private consultations. I'm writing another book. And so this here, what really upsets me about this, and people say, well, did it affect your income? This was not an issue of income. I did most of my work pro bono anyway. This was more of an issue of it was something of ethics. Right. It was something that I held in high esteem to fight for human rights. Right. And what I do in my private time at Jihad Watch, it was also fighting for human rights. Right. This was the issue, and it really is a warning to all Canadians.
Right. Well, very interesting. Thank you for taking the time, and I hope you continue to speak out for human rights and for Canadian values. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Ezra. All the best to you.
All right, you too. Well, that's Christine Douglas Williams with a very interesting story about a purge of anyone who reports to or is paid by the Canadian government, an ideological purge. I think it's a premonition of what's to come from M103. That's an excerpt from my daily TV show, The Ezra Levant Show. Normally it's behind a paywall, but I thought you'd like this video, so we put it on YouTube. If you want to subscribe to watch the daily show every day, including always 2 interviews a day, and I read my hate mail, just click on this screen and become a premium member.